Hey, welcome back everybody. Today's the great day that you are going to learn how to play Taxman by the Beatles, just like you hear it on the record. I'm going to cover the rhythm guitar sections and of course the great lead guitar sections that you've all been asking about for a long time now. So listen, I appreciate if you haven't done so already, please jump down and click the subscribe button and ring the bell. Let you know every time that I release new content, which I do every single week. All my lessons have jump links where you can zip right to the part of the lesson that you want to hear. And if you're looking for other ways to support the channel, I appreciate that. There's links down below on how to do that, which include super thanks, which is like throwing a tip in the tip jar. You can join my Patreon page where I have tabs and chord charts for all the songs that I do on YouTube like this. And there's even a store for merchandise, but check it out in the description. Well, just a few days ago, the Beatles released the new Revolver Super Deluxe set, and it's a treasure trove of great content in there. Not only do they have new stereo mixes of the album, they've got a full set of mono mixes in there, which I love. And it's got a bunch of new information on and recordings of outtakes, which illuminate a lot of interesting stuff. And I'm going to be doing a lot of videos over the next several weeks on the Revolver songs. It's my favorite Beatle album, and so much greatness is wrapped up on that record. Okay, but let's get to Taxman. So, Taxman, George Harrison song, and here's where he's really coming into his own as a songwriter, and he even gets 3 songs on this record. So he gets to open the record with this great tune. Okay, so let's talk about gear for a little bit. So I'm using my Epiphone Casino, which was one of the Beatle arsenal guitars of the time. In fact, John, George, and Paul all had Epiphone Casinos. And as we'll hear, Paul McCartney uses his Casino, and he plays that great solo that you hear on the song. It's actually not a George solo, it's a Paul solo. And who sort of knows what the rhythm guitar was? I think it was a Casino. It actually could have been Strat, but I'm going to go with my Casino here just to keep it consistent. I'm on my bridge pickup. I've got my volume and tone all the way up. Now, it's well known that the Beatles used Vox amplifiers a lot, especially in the early days of their career. But in this period, they had a number of newer and sometimes prototype Vox amplifiers. They were the 7000 series amplifiers, and these are amplifiers that have a solid state preamp section and then a tube power amp section. Also in the studio, they're pictured with Fender Showmans in there. It's really hard to know exactly what amp that they used on all of these songs, but the sort of harsh, brittle tone that sort of dominates a lot of the songs on this record, I think it does sit well to assume that a lot of these are on those Vox 7000 series amps. So much so that there's a company called Aclam, I think, or Acclaim, who has made a pedal called Dr. Robert, and they even got Klaus Voormann, who did all the cover art for Revolver, the album. He did the art for this pedal, and I actually ordered this, and I'm going to be using this today for these Revolver videos. So there's information about, I'll give you links on some information about this great Dr. Robert amp pedal, but it's supposed to be emulating a specific 7000 series amp that the Beatles had in the studio. But it's really meant to emulate that sort of tone that solid state preamp gives you. Now, word of caution, when you're playing Taxman, the temptation is to crank up the distortion, okay? And I think a lot of the harder edge, overdriven sort of sound that you're hearing on a lot of these songs, including Taxman, if you listen really close, it really isn't fat distortion. You know, when you use your sort of standard overdrive pedals and you dial that in and then you play it and then you listen to the record, it's really not all that distorted. It's more like it's a lot of compression is what they get. And when you add on a whole bunch of compression on there, it does start to create a little bit of that distorted or that harder edge sound. So I'm playing in that realm. So I don't really have distortion. I have a little bit of gain on my Dr. Robert pedal. I've got the mids cranked up. And this is the sound that I'm getting. You know, it's closer than when I'm doing sort of a full-throated overdrive, and so I'm going to go with this tone. And when I jump into the lead, I'm just going to add on some compression to it, and it fattens it up and adds that next level. So there you go. So let's talk about the rhythm guitar section. So the chords that you're going to be using here, the song is in D7. This is the chord shape of the D7, which dominates this song. Right? And that's really how it starts. You know, it does the count in 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And you just start right on this D7. And then when you get those punches, you know, the change to that is this D7 with when you're adding on, you're just taking that D7 and you're shifting your hand to this position, and you're adding on that F note. So it's sort of like, people refer to that as the Hendrix chord, right? So it's like a D7 minor 9, I think, is what it is. So that's all that part is. Then you're sliding it down to a C7, because I'm the Taxman. G7. And that's really it in terms of the chords during the verses, right? So running through that one sort of verse measure, let's go. Down. G. And that's the whole verse configuration. Now, there's a pre-chorus section, I guess I would call it. You know, when you drive a car, try to sit, need to walk, we go walk. And then we're into the guitar solo. So that's the sort of pre-chorus variation to that. But that's really all it is. So your chords are D7, C7, G7, and then of course you have your D7 with your minor 9 for those punches. Right? The only other chord that's going to come into play is at the very end. So the last lyric line, and you're working for no one but me, right? And you're working for no one but me, right? So that's an F7. That's it. So the only time you go to that F7 is at the end there. But everything else is those chords that we covered there. Something I think is interesting is the vocal arrangements during all of that. You know, all of those chords are, you know, dominant 7s, right? Right. There's where you have your flat 7 in there. And the temptation and the obvious would be when you're doing your vocal harmonies is to match that, right? But the genius, for me anyway, is that when they do their vocal harmonies, they keep that major. They just do a major triad. Right? So it's not really the 7th that's going on. It's, right? Taxman. Right? So like the part where it's, you know, if you drive a car. You know, it's all major. I mean, they could have done. right? But they don't. John, I think, is the one that's singing that root note. And they do that C. Taxman! You know, it's great. It's like just cuts right through, and it's all major against those dominant sevenths. So great. Anyway, I digress a little bit. Let's talk about the solo guitar now. Okay, now the solo guitar section. So again, this is Paul McCartney. This is Paul McCartney on his Epiphone Casino by all accounts. And he just turns out a fantastic ripping solo on this. And again, I would challenge you, listen to the tone of that. It's super tough sounding, but it's not like a distortion, really. I mean, it's distorted, but I think they're achieving their distortion more by just compressing the crap out of it, and just getting a little bit of hair on there. But there's a lot of clarity to the notes, and so it's very difficult, really, to replicate it, you know, exactly as you're hearing on the record. But this is how I'm doing it anyway. So I'm running, you know, compressor. I've kicked that on into my Dr. Robert, or whatever your sort of gain pedal that you have. Again, I would caution using sort of lighter gain on there. But I've got this compressor, but I'm using this Blackfinger Electro-Harmonix compressor, which is a tube compressor, and I love this pedal, man. It's so big. It's so impractical for being on a pedal board, but I just love it. And I think it gets a sound that's close to what I need here. So, okay, so the key to this solo, in my opinion, is it's like the attitude that you play it with. Like, I'll walk through the notes and how you know, where you're putting your fingers. But in addition to really getting that, it's the attitude that you're using with this. And, you know, it's crazy. It's like using... When McCartney is soloing during this period, and Sgt. Pepper and onward, he's really embracing, he's way more in the sort of distortion Jimi Hendrix world, is where he wants to go. Like, he doesn't sound like Jimi Hendrix, but he is a big fan of like the overdrive, the distorted, the vibrato, the crazy vibrato, and the, you know, the 60s sound, the rock guitar that's starting to emerge. So a lot of the McCartney solos that you hear have a lot of that in common. And this is no different. So it means that you got to play this with attitude, right? So I'm going to run through the solo here one time. Let's see how this sounds, and then we'll break it down part by part slowly. All right, here goes. So choked it on the end there, but see what I mean? Like, if it's you got to give it that attitude, and you got to hit it hard to get anywhere close. But okay, so let's talk about each part of the solo. So he announces himself, you know, firmly in the very beginning here by playing these D octaves, right? Ba ma 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 ma. And so we're basically playing off of this. We're sort of playing off of this D minor pentatonic position, right? This is the highest note you hit, the D. And we're going to go all the way down to the open G string, and actually you're going to hit the open D string, right? But really, the life of the solo is the sort of Indian feel that is introduced here when he's doing these descending and ascending runs, right? That kind of stuff, right? And but it's starting in that sort of D pentatonic, right? So it's so that's the first part, right? And then you're going to follow it up with a Now, when I listen to that, you know, when I download that solo and listen to it on a, you know, on my DAW, and I can sort of slow it down, that part actually is. So it's not a hammer-on. That third one doesn't sound like a hammer-on. It's like a bend up, but it happens so fast. So fast that I haven't mastered that without not sounding right. So I hammer it on twice, right? So I hammer twice. Now here's where we go down. And the notes that we're going to use on our way down are a little bit different than when we come up. So when we go down, we're going to start on the D note, and we're going to go to the major 7. That's the way down. On your way up, it's... So the notes that are different, on the way down, you hit this one. On the way up, you hit this one. Right? The 7th. And I wiggle the crap out of it every chance I get. All right, then we're back to our D minor pentatonic. All right. It's actually not a bend to open it. It's... And that's how I grab that, all right? So let me try and run through that whole thing as one motion slowly without getting lost. Here we go. All right, now that's the guitar solo section. Now coming out of that is where, and I don't know if it's Paul or George. I'm just going to say Paul, since he played the solo. So he has a series of fills or embellishments that he does here during the verses. So, for example, the next verse is, "Don't ask me what I want it for," I think. "Don't ask me what I want it for." And during those, the first embellishment that he does is... Right? How I play that is, it's around this, again, this shape of the D chord. And I catch that open D string. And I slide up. Now, he might hammer on, but I slide into it. And give that a good wiggle. Taxman, Mr. Wilson. Right? It's that part. Taxman, Mr. Heath. Then it goes down. So it's the same sort of thing we're doing, but now we're in that C position. Down to our G. And then we add a little more, and this is where it starts sounding like Purple Haze. Taxman. It's that part. And that's where he really goes crazy with the vibrato again there too, right? So building those, right? The first embellishment is goes down to C. My advice to those who die: Taxman! Taxman! Okay, now we're to the very end, right? And remember that last chord on that, at the very end, the rhythm chord is playing this this F7, and you're working for no one but me, right? What whoever's playing lead is doing, he's outlining an F up here. So you know this F chord. So he's playing an F and a C note, and he's sliding into them. The third time, if you want to be record perfect, he catches that A note in there, and then he goes back. So he might be fingering this all the whole time. Like that. Taxman! But that's it. So again, that last little part. Whoops. Again, so that last part. You can hit that A or not, it doesn't matter. And then the cool thing about this song, and I think I've heard it before, maybe it's on Anthology, but on the box set here, you hear the real ending of Taxman, that take that they did, which apparently was take one. It was the first take of the song that they did. But they just end it there. There is no solo that comes in again. So they do. And that's how they end it. So it was during mixing that they made the decision to fly in and reintroduce that guitar solo again. And just play that again through the fade out. But kind of cool. All right, well, that was Taxman. Did you learn anything new today? I hope you did. If you haven't done so already and you like what you saw here, jump down and click subscribe and ring the bell. The bell lets you know when I drop new content, which I do every single week. And let me know in the comments what you thought about this, and if there's another song you want me to take on and do a lesson similar, I would love to hear from you. Okay? Until next week, take care, everybody.